Last week during a PMQ stream, Jeremy Corbyn raised one of actually many reasonable and legitimate questions. The questions concerned a recent defeat the government had in the Court of Appeals with regards to its screening process for selling about £5 billion worth of weaponry to Saudi Arabia.
Mr. Speaker, I welcome the judgment of the Court of Appeal last Thursday against UK arms sales to Saudi Arabia. The court found that the government had, and I quote, made no concluded assessments of whether the Saudi-led coalition had committed violations of international humanitarian law during the Yemen conflict and made no attempt to do so. Does the Prime Minister dispute that finding?
Enlightening. In the 46-page report on this, the government lost on one ground out of 4. The ground was that the government had not properly vetted all those that were receiving arms that had been licensed to be sold, instead opting to trust that Saudi Arabia, who were doing the investigations themselves, were doing an adequate job. The government has stated they intend to appeal this because they believe that they are doing everything correctly, after making the claim during PMQs as well that roughly £700 million worth of weaponry had not been sold and not been licensed because inadequate results had been achieved during the screening process, but still £4.5 billion worth of ammunition, weapons and whatever else really, I assume, a complimentary lollipop, had been sold to the Saudi Arabian forces. Now, it is important to address some context for why we are selling them that to begin with. For this we have to go back 4 years, where the Houthi rebels, who are an anti-government fighting group, seized control of Yemen, which forced the legitimate government into exile. They have taken up residence now in a different city within Yemen. Fighting in the Yemen has been ongoing since the 90s, when North and South Yemen merged. When the fighting started, Saudi Arabia received approval and backing from America, France and the United Kingdom to conduct military action in Yemen to help the legitimate government regain control. However, their tactics have been, well, if we just wipe out everyone, then the government can have their country back, which is a tactic I think many can agree is wrong, with them effectively carpet bombing civilians indiscriminately because they can. Since Saudi Arabia has shown they have absolutely zero military acumen when it comes to proceeding with dealing with rebels, campaign against arms trade, Oxfam and a bunch of other humanitarian groups have been trying to take the government to task for what they have been doing, for selling the arms, with many pointing out that the current Prime Minister Theresa May has a vested interest in those arms being sold because her husband owns a part of a company that has been licensed. Oh dear. In February, the House of Lords that is, reported that the weapons sales were unlawful by not performing independent checks to see if arms supplied by the UK are being used in breach of the law, instead which was what was used in the appeal against them, relying on inadequate investigations that were being performed by the Saudis. Jeremy Corbyn has basically annihilated the government on this. It is one of the few times I have to take his side because he's quite right, that the people are being utterly, needlessly harmed to achieve a goal. Many pointing out that this is a war that can be avoided. I don't personally know or understand the full context for why the north and south of Yemen merged to begin with. I'm not suggesting either that it should simply be divided again to protect the people. I am suggesting, though, that perhaps, considering what the government is doing, they accept the defeat, that they cannot continue to sell arms to somebody who would use it on innocent people as a measure of trying to save some face while you still have a chance. I am going to link a number of articles down below on this, because there's a lot more to it. The Campaign Against Arms Trade have a considerable amount of information about this, along with the articles that originally got me here, along with the Judiciary Appeal report that you would need to see so as to get greater context on the one ground the government lost. It covers a lot of pages though. Ground 2 is there, so is Ground 4. I have no idea what Ground 3 is, but we do know with absolute certainty the government only lost on Ground 1, which was the background check part. With there being a conflict of vested interest one does have to wonder why the government would appeal this, when it's not really, in the grand scheme of things, worth as much money to us. I'm also intrigued to know why in 2015 Sarkozy, Obama and Cameron approved this. I would very much like to know what their motivations were back then.